what was being even advertised as like a defensive battle, right? Normally you see the matchups that the TV companies build the next upcoming game on. It's quarterback versus quarterback or quarterback versus wide receiver. This was Myles Garrett versus Sauce Gardner. It was two defensive players. This was what this was being talked up as being. And right away it was like immediate touchdown followed by immediate touchdown followed by another touchdown. We're like, this is going to be 45-43 with offenses rolling. And then, eventually some turnovers started to happen and the second half happened. But kind of crazy immediate offensive production from both sides.
Most 2023 game possible. I think Al Michaels said it was the highest scoring first half in a game, not just Thursday, like any week
this year
or any day of the week. Yeah, in like 4 or 5 years. So, yeah, the script was good for both teams, and then the Browns just continued to score drive after drive. David Njoku creating a bunch of yards after the catch. Jerome Ford looked good in space as well. Like Noah Amari, too. You'd think, I don't know. It was bizarre. I couldn't believe the first half at all. I was just sitting there like, what is happening in this game?
Yeah, no Amari Cooper. That was a kind of late scratch heading into the game with an injury. And you're like, okay, no Amari Cooper going up against good defense. Like, this is where bad Joe Flacco comes back to the surface. And, he had a couple of ugly plays in there. He had a turnover-worthy completion, which you don't see too often. But the fumble where he gets back on top of it, the turnover-worthy completion to Elijah Moore, the pick itself, obviously. So it wasn't like a perfectly clean game from Flacco, but productive. Like, it was another one of those games where the difference between him and other quarterbacks in this offense is he is moving the ball way easier. He's getting way more production for every mistake that he makes.
I think the beautiful thing, too, is, like, it's a lot of boot action and rollouts and, like, getting him on the move, particularly rolling to his left. I think he's been accurate. He's been able to generate a ton of velocity still. Like, it's not like he's just sitting there like a statue. It's kind of a blend, I think, of what Stefanski likes to do and obviously still changing from the P.J. Walker, DTR, and even Deshaun, I suppose, offense. But yeah, it's just like it shouldn't work. It keeps working. It's just a glorious, glorious thing. But I think there is an element of, like, he's just letting it rip. And there are going to be a ton of turnover-worthy plays. We were talking pre-show. He could have had 5 interceptions against my Bears, and they found a way to win there with 200 passing yards in the fourth quarter. But there also is the element of he's just like this offense was so constricted to start the year, and they were leading on the run game, but they had heavy box counts. They were defenses cheating down on them. You can't right now. Like, you better respect Joe Flacco going deep right now.
Yeah, somebody made the point that, Flacco is changing the offense in terms of opening up what they're able to do. Like, he is making every area of the field a live threat again. And, okay, there are going to be mistakes along the way, but that in itself changes the dynamic of the offense. Like, opposing defenses have to respect more things with Flacco than they do with any of the other quarterbacks the Browns have had playing this season. And whether or not he plays better on a down-to-down basis, like, he doesn't need to for that to still be an improvement, because that threat every single play is important, like particularly in the playoffs where you are forcing defenses to respect more things and therefore not focus too heavily on any one thing.
I think that's my takeaway of the conversation. I know our coworker Timo Riske, who just hates fun. He posted a tweet earlier about how the Browns offense is still generating negative EPA over the last month. And look, like, we should poke holes in everything. There are a lot of negative plays there, a lot of his turnovers too.
Right.
But I think the question from that stems is, okay, this is one of, if not the best defenses in 2023. Does it make sense to have a high variance quarterback who is taking a lot of chances, risks, and yeah, they're working out right now, but should they be kind of a neutered offense and worry more about matriculating the ball down the field as opposed to explosives? A, I would just say, like, no in a general sense, but B, even if you do want to pivot to that come playoff time, because of what you've put on tape the last month, like, defenses can't just be sitting on that and expecting that, because you always can then pivot, have a hard play action, boot rollout, and Flacco can fling it 70 yards downfield. So, like, you're helping yourself if you do want to play that style, because if you were doing that every single week and then going into the playoffs and everyone knew what you're going to do, I think it's easier to pivot to that than it would be to do the inverse, right? We're like, all right, we're going to open things up and start slinging it like in the playoffs against a good playoff opponent on the road. But yeah, I think it just helps them by establishing, respect from opposing defenses.
Yeah, I think the composition of some of these numbers is important more than just the number itself. Like, we talked about this on the show a little bit the other day. Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs, right? They have essentially ended up with the exact same EPA per play for the Minnesota Vikings, and yet the style of play couldn't be more different. The overall, like, how they've arrived at that number couldn't be further apart, and I think there's some importance to that. And the same thing is true. I haven't run the numbers since last night's game, but before yesterday's game, Flacco was basically in the same area as all the other Browns quarterbacks in terms of EPA per play this season, right? So he hadn't made that kind of improvement to the team, but how he was doing it is obviously very different from any of these other quarterbacks. And I think that is a relevant part to all this. It isn't just like, what is your overall EPA per play? What is the passer rating? What is the whatever? Like, how that is comprised, how it comes about, I think actually makes a difference, certainly going forward.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then also the context of, I mean, this is a Jets team that coming into this game was third in the NFL in EPA per play allowed on defense with an elite schedule. I mean, they've shut down Mahomes, Stroud, Josh Allen 1.5 times. Like you go, Jalen Hurts played poorly against them. Dak did have a good game against them. He's like the only of the upper echelon QBs that I think really. Oh, no, I guess Miami too with Tua. They obviously played well against his defense, but like this is an elite unit. And you have the Browns, no Amari, down 3 starting tackles or 2 starting tackles, and the top backup in DeJuan Jones, who's effectively been a starter most of the year. And you're still doing this. And again, the Jets, maybe there's some quit in them. Obviously, their season is over. Didn't go out how they expected it to go. But, yeah, also 4th before this week in EPA per dropback allowed. And they were just getting carved up.
Yeah, and I felt like this was a game where their defense didn't quit, actually. Like, they've had some games this year where I think that kind of happened, where they went, look, to hell with this. The offense isn't going to do anything. We're out. The Jets' defense in the second half actually gave their offense enough chances to make this happen, and they just didn't. Like, they had 2 or 3 drives in the sort of late third quarter, early fourth quarter, where if they'd put points on the board, like a touchdown, this game could have become interesting down the stretch, and it never did, because every time they got a stop, the Browns got one too. And, like Trevor Siemian just didn't have quite enough Will Levis in him, right, when he needed that first down. Collapsed just before the first down marker. But I felt like the Jets defense actually did keep fighting throughout the game. They had some rough plays early on where they just let David Njoku wander through the defense multiple times. But after that, I think they clamped down better in the second half. They got some good pressure. They were able to get some stops. They got some turnovers. And their offense just didn't have enough, again, all the way through the season, so it didn't matter. They'd already dug themselves a deep enough hole that they couldn't get out of it without another defensive score coming on the board, which, by the way, they probably got screwed out of with that fumble that wasn't given live and then got given to them on review, right? Jermaine Johnson picked that up and scored with it. So if that had been allowed go, that would have been a touchdown and made it interesting.
Yeah, we're not going to do a ref show, but that was like the most obvious fumble in the history of organized football. I don't really know what they saw there. I mean, also, I guess we'll touch on it. And again, it's a lost season. It's Trevor Siemian. I get that, but I was chuckling. They showed the graphic. If you're watching the Prime Vision, I don't know if they showed it on the main broadcast. The guy who does a lot of the 4th down decision making for the Jets, his name's Dan Shamash, and I guess they call his game planning Smash Ball. I think apparently I'm being facetious because it's probably Robert Saleh, not him, but I guess Smash Ball is you smash the ball with your foot with a punt when it's 4th and 6 at the Browns 39-yard line and you're down 17 points. Like, I never understand stuff like that. It's like in a bowl game when a 5-7 team in a bowl game is punting on like 4th and 2. Like, I don't think if I was a head coach of a college football team 5-7 in a bowl game, I'd punt the entire time. Like, it's just bizarre to me. But yeah, so like the Jets also just didn't even try to win this game when they could have, converted some late 4th downs and made it interesting.
Yeah, you would think that once you're eliminated from everything, like the level of fear, like what have we got to lose, should rapidly diminish, and you should just get hyper aggressive, because what's the downside? Like, we're probably losing the game already. We're already in a hole. Like, what the hell? Might as well go out for it and see if we can go down swinging. Getting back to Flacco for a minute, Like, this is such an insane story now. I mean, old man Flacco with his gray beard and his 5 kids and his, sleepy demeanor on the sideline because it's late past his bedtime as an East Coast dad. This is now his best PFF grade since 2014. It's his second highest big time throw rate since 2013. He's still got a fairly high turnover worthy play rate, but this is the best play we've seen from Flacco in the better part of a decade, which is nuts. That shouldn't. I mean, he showed a couple of games like this ish last year for the Jets, where he put up a ton of yards, 300 back-to-back games, and then the wheels fell off, right? And he had a 27 grade against the Bengals, had 6 turnover-worthy plays. That hasn't happened yet for the Browns, and maybe won't happen. But if he avoids that complete and total implosion, we're just getting this weird late-career YOLO Joe Flacco where he just goes out there and slings it and sees what happens.
This is a guy who 5 or 6 years ago now, I think it was, where he was 8 of 18 for 28 yards with 2 picks. I don't know if you remember that box score. I don't know if that was at the Broncos or one of his many stops. Maybe the Ravens still towards the end of that run before Lamar took over. It's remarkable. It really, really is. And then all the context we just added into it as well. I mean, Kevin Stefanski already has a Coach of the Year award, and there are a lot of coaches doing things with backup quarterbacks. Maybe we'll just give him Comeback Player of the Year, I suppose. That'll be who gets the award there. But no, it is remarkable. And I think the interesting thing is, if you have maybe one trait or talent or skill that is still at an elite or very, very good level, and that for him that's arm strength, I think he still has an absolute hose, even in his late 30s. Maybe you can find a way to construct an offense around that because he's always been immobile. He's always had the limitations that he has now, maybe more exacerbated. But it really is one of the funnier stories, of a crazy, crazy year of backup quarterback stories. I mean, truly breaking records for the month of December. One of the greatest months if you take out the 8 interceptions, but one of the greater productive months we've seen in a very long time.
He kind of alluded to this a little bit in the interview afterwards. And I don't want to put words into his mouth too much, but he basically suggested that, late in his career, once he stopped being the guy, right? Once he reached the point in his career where he was now a backup or an emergency quarterback or whatever, once he kind of ran out of chances as a true starter, as a plan A, it's kind of changed his mentality. He went from, he started to appreciate just having the opportunity to go and play football for a living. And it's almost like that has now transformed him into Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? He's now done what we were saying the Jets haven't done, right? What the hell? Let's just go out swinging. Let's just loose the cannon, start firing this over the field. And if we lose, if I throw a bunch of turnovers, who cares? I was out of the league anyway. Doesn't matter, right? This is a rare opportunity to just go down playing the way you want to play the game, and if it comes out good, great. If it doesn't, I was already done, right? I've already had a career. So it's almost like this liberating thing for him that he has no downside anymore. He's got no fear. He's just out here firing it around. He's not being conservative, and so far it is paying off more than it's costing him.
Yeah, you're not looking over your shoulder or worried about getting yanked, especially in this situation, right? It's even with all the mistakes, he's probably not going to get pulled at any point, barring an injury the rest of the way. Yeah, no, it is definitely he's playing way, way more freely than probably recent years, and there's something to it. Because, this guy, people forget, his playoff run is one of the greatest playoff runs of all time.
It's got history.
He has that in him. He just has been super inconsistent, and at a certain point became a defensive pass interference merchant for a stretch there. But no, it's like I said, I honestly, if you just cater things around one top-end trait or talent and then have a guy that just is playing freely, doesn't really worry about the downside, I guess this is what you get.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. After that, the turnover-worthy completion, again, I was talking to Steve, and I'm he might be the greatest of all time at generating positive EPA plays out of fundamentally bad throws. Between his patented underthrown pass interference career, signature throw and that type of throw, the man just seems to get good results with bad process sometimes. The other note of caution is I saw somebody tweeting that, I can't remember the last time the Browns have embraced a quarterback like this, because obviously you look at the way they're reacting to Flacco right now. Tyler over there in the booth, the man's got a Flacco tattoo in his ass at this point. You know, the level of love outpouring for Flacco is amazing. I would, however, suggest that the Browns fans tend to do this for basically every quarterback they have, which is what makes that lengthy nameplate jersey so tragic. Is they did this for Charlie Fry, they did this for Johnny Manziel, they did this for Baker when he won them the playoff, when he got them to the playoffs for the first time. They do this for every quarterback, and now Joe Flacco's the next guy. And you know, let's just hope that he doesn't break their hearts as well.
Hometown kid Brian Hoyer was the future at one point. Like we could go on a list of, you show some flashes and, you're the future. But hey, look, they deserve it. They deserve to have fun with it. I mean, they're legitimately in the race for the #1 seed in the AFC with their fourth quarterback going into Week 18. Obviously, not super likely that it happens, but the fact that it's possible at all is quite a miracle. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. He's not like the larger conversation of like, is he going to be back next year and all that? Like, no, like probably not. I mean, maybe I guess as a backup, I suppose. But then Watson will throw one pick and there will be like Flacco chants echoing throughout the stadium. So I don't know if they can do that.
And the Browns become a far scarier playoff team to any opponent than if they simply had, a game managing quarterback that was limited and wasn't going to make mistakes, but wasn't going to do much positive either. Like the fact that in any given game you could get the high end of Joe Flacco, and if that happens, you run up against a team that's putting up a ton of yards on offense and has the best defense in the NFL. I mean, Myles Garrett in that game absolutely wrecked shop. He was destroying Mekhi Becton. Now there was a couple of negative plays in there as well, but dude, that guy's, I think he had 10 pressures in the game. Most of them were pretty impactful pressures as well. And he was ruining Mekhi Becton, who's not a terrible left tackle. I mean, there were far worse tackles out there than Mekhi Becton, and Garrett was doing that to him. The Browns can do that to anybody in the playoffs, and Flacco could catch fire at any given moment. That is a team nobody wants to play.
Yeah, we should highlight the defense too. He was as dominant as I've seen him in a game. The inside move on Mekhi Becton worked every single time. Like he would just take one hard jab to the outside, Becton would overset, and then he would just run inside. And I think I saw it work 6 times. So yeah, like the pick from, was it Ronnie Hickman, who also quietly has been awesome the last month since he took over for Thornhill. Delp it out now too. I think he was more in the box last night, kind of doing different things. I thought it was weird he didn't get drafted out of Ohio State. He was a productive player, maybe tested poorly or whatever, but clearly an instinctual guy and a guy that can make plays around the football. He had a pick a couple weeks ago too, I want to say. So, I mean, this unit top to bottom is really, really loaded and fun, and most of these guys should be back come playoff time. Martin Emerson should have had a pick in that game. He dropped one. Yeah, no, they're a scary team, and yeah, the Garrett, when he wins Defensive Player of the Year and Pittsburgh blames PFF and the nerds and all that, it's inevitable, and I accept it. If you watch that game last night and don't think it was one of the more dominant performances, just because his box score, what do you have, 1 sack only?
Yeah.
I mean, he impacted half a dozen plays substantially, if not more.
And it's one of those games, though, where the reason, he should have had a second sack at least. I mean, there was a play where he whooped the right tackle and didn't, Trevor Siemian got away from him and then ends up scrambling up the middle, gets a few yards. That was an actual play where Garrett should have finished that, should have had another sack, didn't. And that was a sort of, it's not a negative play because the pressure was instant. It's still a positive pass rush. But it is a play that he should have had a higher grade on because he should have finished it and maybe other pass rushers would have finished it. But yeah, a dominant outing from him and insane all the way through the season. Myles Garrett absolutely has a solid Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. And it isn't just PFF that thinks it. Brandon Thorne, is the definition of a tape guy, right? He goes and does his own sort of high-quality sack metric that I think is what he calls it. But basically, whether the sack was actually that type of play, right? Instant dominant win, or was it a cleanup play? All those kinds of things. And Garrett is through the roof in terms of high-quality, impactful pass rushes this season. So the tape people agree, as well as the stat people. It's literally just the people counting box score numbers and the slightly more advanced box score numbers. They're nope, it's definitely TJ Watt over Myles Garrett. The numbers always say Watt is better, but they don't necessarily this year.
On the play you're talking about too, where Simeon squirts up the middle. So there's a video going around that's like, oh, it's an unblocked pressure. That's that's the biggest tell and the funniest thing ever, because it's not unblocked pressure. The tight end chips him. It doesn't do a good job of it. And the right tackle, he is looking at a linebacker. I think it's Usu Koromoa, but then quickly pivots to trying to block Myles Garrett as well. But Garrett is so fast around the edge that he just beats him to the spot. Like, we know what unblocked pressure is. Yeah, he's probably had some this year. That was not one of them. And yeah, he should have finished the play for sure. But I was just laughing at that because I was like, he made that look like an unblocked pressure because that's how quick his get off was. But yeah, anyway, that story is a whole nother story. That defense is so fun. At all three levels, they have playmakers. And this cliche is the most overused ever. They are a team that no one wants to play come playoff time.
I mean, they're the definition of that. I've talked myself into the Rams being that, maybe on the NFC, but like, you might not want to play the Rams, or you don't feel great about it, but you are terrified of the Browns on the other side. Like, it's a different proposition in terms of teams you don't want to face.